It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. We brought in a panel of experts, but particularly Apple experts this week. Renee Ritchie, Philip-Elmer DeWitt, and Dwight Silverman, because Apple announced, a whole lot of things. It's not going to be an all-Apple show, but we will definitely try to understand why they put all of that power into the new iPad Pro. We'll also talk about antitrust action, not just against Apple, but Facebook and Amazon. There's really some stuff going on in Washington right now. And Signal's CEO, the great Moxie Marlinspike, just hacked the hackers and is giving us a new technique to give it right back to them. It's all coming up next on Twit.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twit, This Week in Tech, episode 820, recorded Sunday, April 25th, 2021. Hide the pickle. This Week in Tech is brought to you by Audible. Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment. Delve into your next title on Audible with Audible Plus. New members can try Audible Plus for 30 days. All you have to do is download the Audible app and get started. In fact, there's a free trial waiting for you at audible.com/twit or text TWIT to 500-500. And by Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door free, go to mintmobile.com/twit. And by Amazon Pharmacy. Amazon Prime members can save on prescription medication when not using insurance and get free 2-day delivery. Learn more at amazon.com/twitrx. And by ZipRecruiter. Finding someone to wear many hats or one very specific hat is no easy task. ZipRecruiter finds people with the right experience for your job, then invites them to apply, whether that's a civil engineer in New York or a mascot in Missouri. Try ZipRecruiter free at ziprecruiter.com/twit. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news with some of my favorite people. Renee Ritchie is joining us this week. Normally on Mac Break Weekly, we didn't have the benefit of your wisdom on Tuesday because you were briefing all day with the fruit company. Right?
It's a job, Leo.
Nah.
It's a gig. You got to do it.
But I'm glad you're here because there is much to be asked. That Spring Loaded event was loaded. I mean, that was all.
I barely slept, and then I got my first AstraZeneca dose, and then I slept 22 hours. So I'm ready to go. I feel like a super soldier.
You didn't get the Bill Gates vaccine, huh? Okay, well, if you insist.
They're only giving AstraZeneca to people under 60 here, so I took what they offered.
But that's a one-shot deal, right?
No, second shot in August.
You got to have two? Okay. In August?
Yeah.
August?
Yeah. Oh, so it's a long...
Canada's not quite up to your levels yet.
August. Okay. Oh. Well, welcome to America, where it turns out something like 8% of the people aren't getting their second shot. They just go, one's enough.
Yeah.
One's enough. I don't need another one.
So many one-shotters in the hospital are saying that, too.
Yeah. Dwight Silverman's also here. I used to say with the Tech Burger at Houston Chronicle, he's got a new gig. He's at Forbes. Congratulations, Dwight. On.forbes.com/Dwight. It's good to see you.
Thank you. I'm no longer grilling at the Chronicle, but I'm being smooth at Forbes.
Smooth.
It's really it is a lot of fun, and it's a completely different media company. I like it.
Good. It's funny because I think you keep trying to retire.
Yes. Yes.
It's right out of The Godfather, and they keep pulling me back in.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was retired for about 20 minutes, and then suddenly I was working for the man again.
That's great. It's really great, and always great to have you on. Also, the same Philip-Elmer DeWitt, who, like Dwight, used to be a ink-stained wretch, and now he's a what would you call a bit-stained wretch. He's moved to the internet, PED 30. Or version 3.0, Philip-Elmer DeWitt. It's great to have you, Philip. Nice to see you.
I've had 2 Moderna shots. I'm totally vaccinated.
As have I. Yeah. Wednesday.
Same here.
Wednesday will be my 2 week. So, what are we gonna do? We're gonna have a party.
Well, in Massachusetts, you're supposed to wear your mask all the time, even outside.
Yeah.
We're playing full Fauci here in Massachusetts.
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm so used to a mask now that I feel naked without it. Oh, you could see my mouth. I wonder if it, remember in the Victorian era, if you could see a woman's ankles because skirts were so long, it was very erotic. Do you think the mouth will be like, I'm not showing you my mouth until we're married.
Feel cold now? Like it feels cold when you're not wearing
it's
like when
chilly.
you're not wearing your watch.
It's chilly.
The skin's not used to it anymore.
I wear something all the time on my neck and then pull it up to,
What's really creepy are the masks with the clear areas around the mouth so you can see people's mouth moving. That is just
well, that's for people who read lips.
It may be, but it sure looks bizarre.
Is that a thing in Houston? Everybody's wearing those?
No, but I've seen a couple of them, and they're kind of jarring. When you think, oh, they're not actually wearing a mask, and then you catch it. It's
a little creepy, to be honest. But you know what?
Accessibility is worth it.
Mask fashion. Look what a world we live in now, Neil Stephenson couldn't have written this better. This is like how weird weird life has become. So, all three of you Apple experts. I mean, you have expertise in other areas, but I think it's no accident that we've got the three of you on today because Apple did some really interesting things on Tuesday. We thought it was going to be an announcement of a new iPad, kind of maybe the AirTags finally. Long shot was perhaps an Apple TV. If you had iMacs on your bingo card, because that was a late rumor, maybe you thought, well, I'm never going to get to cover that square. All of that and more. It was loaded, literally loaded with stuff. Spring-loaded.
Spring-loaded.
So, I mean, we use MacBreak Weekly to do the kind of rundown of the whole thing bit by bit. But there were some very interesting bits in there that in some ways I think are informative about what Apple's plans are. The most weird thing, and I'll let you all three talk about this. We'll start with Renee because he's got been briefed by Apple officially. The weirdest thing was they put the M1 chip in the iPad. They put up to 16 gigs of RAM, up to 2 terabytes of storage in the iPad. The fully maxed out iPad Pro 12.9-inch now comes in at $2,399 before you buy a $350 keyboard. You are literally now in the $3,000 range with tax. What the hell is the intent there?
So I think, at different levels, there are different intents. One is an M1 chip is functionally an A14X. It's the same chip that's in the iPhone with the extra cores that you'd expect to come in an iPad anyway. They always used to do like the A12X or the A12Z for the iPad, which was the iPhone chip with extra cores. So we're getting that and the benefit of things like the Thunderbolt controllers, which are on package for that chip. And there's some extra Mac bits like the virtualization and the emulation that they don't need for the iPad. But I think it's just that's economy of scales for them rather than make a similar chip that maybe didn't require all the IP on the die. They can just make more of the chip they're already making. And they're already putting it in MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, Mac Mini, iMac. It just gives them such good economies of scale, especially now when the chip industry is under a ton of pressure. I think that was close to a no-brainer in hindsight for them to go that way. But to your point, you now have an iPad where the previous high RAM limit was 6 gigabytes, and now you have 8 gigabytes and 16 gigabytes.
Big jump.
And I think what Apple's, it's a huge jump, but it's a hugely functional jump for the iPad because apps like Photoshop had a terrible time. They had to go back to their original source code to try to get it functioning because also like an iOS doesn't swap. So there's very little you could do when you run out of RAM on iOS. And this just opens it up to having way more pro apps, like using LumaFusion and a theoretical Final Cut for iPad, using apps like Photoshop or maybe Apple bringing Xcode. This opens up doing more computer-like things in an iPad way, which is what a lot of people, I think, especially people who love the iPad hardware, have always wanted to do.
I mean, Philip, do you think this comes from the fact that they've got a lot of M1s? They bought up all the production TSMC could make, and
no,
might as well just put it in everything, right? What do we have, an M1 iPhone next year?
I think the economy of scale answer is the right one, but it's also a marketing move. It's sort of saying I'm an iPad that's as strong as a Mac. It did raise a lot of questions about why there's so much power in this iPad Pro that can't use a lot of Pro apps like Final Cut, I guess. This was Jason Snell's complaint, why he hated the software that came with this, because it hasn't been written to the machine yet. But we do have a meeting in June where those questions might be answered.
Yeah. I said the same thing. I maybe a little differently, which is, and I said this last year, this iPad is great hardware with mediocre software. The software doesn't live up to it. And I think people are saying the same thing. And the hope is that Apple will live up to it. They'll put out Xcode for the iPad. They'll put out Final Cut for the iPad. That other companies, I mean, Photoshop is now available on the iPad. Lightroom is available on the iPad. Affinity Photo, you could argue, is a full-blown pro desktop app that works on the iPad.
Some of the 3D stuff.
Yeah. But I think Apple's got to step forward, too, and offer its pro apps on the iPad. I mean,
can I add one thing, Leo? Because a lot of people have been saying this. Like, a lot of people are saying, well, is the M1 going to come to the iPhone now? And I just want to point out the M1 is the same IP generation as the A14 that's already in the iPhone. So an M1 in an iPhone wouldn't mean anything materially. It just has more cores, which wouldn't fit in the thermal design of an iPhone. So what you're going to get is an A15 in the next iPhone, and then M2 will be the Mac and iPad equivalent of that chip.
Or some naming thereof. But,
yes,
but that
whatever marketing
the
comes
idea. This is an 8 CPU, 8 GPU, though, right? This is a full M1.
Yep.
And in fact, that's why you see Thunderbolt 4 coming out of that hole on the side. Or Thunderbolt 3, rather, coming out of that hole on the side. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say Mark Gurman had an interesting take. He said, when is Apple going to rip the Band-Aid off and combine these two operating systems, iOS and Mac OS?
Boy, I hope they don't do that.
And he said that it's a discussion at very high levels at Apple about whether they want to do that, because they're very happy selling two machines to people, an iPad and a Mac. But if they merge, they might only sell one machine. I'm not sure I buy his argument, but I liked his metaphor, ripping the Band-Aid off.
This is, by the way, I think an opinion piece as much as it is reporting, right?
Well, and Apple actually had folks, they had executives out on the stump after the event talking about, no, we have no plans to merge the two, which they've said again and again and again. And I agree with Philip in that a lot of this is marketing. It's functionally, close to the same chip that's in, the iPhone, and it's allows them to say, oh, we now have an M1. I think, and as Renee said, I think the key is going to be the Worldwide Developers Conference and what we see about iPad OS 15. I mean, the fact that, for example, the fact that it doesn't swap now doesn't mean it won't swap in iOS 15, which would, of course, open up all kinds of interesting things that would allow that software to do. So I think this is a kind of they're building a road for the future, both in terms of capability and in terms of marketing, because it certainly is a big sell for those who want to use pro apps.
And there's a problem, too. I mean, Apple's had a huge debate internally for years about what the iPad should be. Steve was adamant that it should never be a Mac. It should never be a PC. It was the computer for everyone for whom a Mac or PC was alienating and off-putting and intimidating. And it was meant to be a product that the mainstream could buy and use, like just the computer for everybody else. And that's why it was so wildly successful. But there's been immense pressure, especially from the nerdier contingent, to make it more and more PC-like, which he fought adamantly, but since Steve's no longer with us, it has been getting nerdier. And the ultimate expression
you can't make it more PC-like than putting the same chip in that you put in your desktops. The 16 gigs of RAM.
So, yeah, but that's the thing.
I mean,
is that
2 terabytes of storage.
The nerds want an iPhone Mini, and then it doesn't sell because the nerds are not a big market. We think we're the major market.
Right.
We're really not the major market. There's 80% of people who want very different things than tech Twitter or tech YouTube. And that argument is still, I don't think it's still won, because the iPad is now functionally complicated for mainstream people and functionally limited for nerdier people. And it still feels like they haven't found the sweet spot between those two things.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that's really interesting on this, and I think opens up new markets, and also argues not for making one OS, but for at least putting more powerful apps on the iPad, is this so-called XDR display. They're using a mini LED technology, which means that this 12.9-inch iPad now is the equivalent of a production-ready display, the kind you would have on a movie set.
A reference monitor.
A reference monitor at the end of the chain where you do everything and then you look at it on the reference monitor, make sure it looks good. You can now begin the production with that. That only added $100 to the cost, at least the way it looks like the way Apple's pricing is working out. That's not the primary cost driver. But still, that is really exciting. And
that puts the pro in pro.
Yeah.
That's something that, you look at that and, okay, there's a reason to do the M1 chip right there, particularly for those who are involved in the creative arts and the visual arts. It becomes almost a must-have machine for those folks.
Yeah, and they played that up on the announcement, showing people making movies with it, and it's a big viewfinder plus a great camera plus a perfect, display. And do you think that the next step for Apple is to put Final Cut on there and to put, if you don't put Xcode on it, you're always going to be tied as a developer to the desktop. Why not put Xcode on it?
Can I ask you, Leo, because you're a coder? Because the big question has never been, and I've talked to people at Apple about this, the big question has never been, like, will they put Xcode? It's figuring out what Xcode is on an iPad. Is it an independent app? And how much of Xcode can they do as an independent app? Is it a companion app where you should be able to have a cloud store and use it on the Mac and then pick up your iPad and use it differently on the iPad? Is it a custom-built version that is in the name only? Like, what would you want for a coding environment on the iPad?
Well, that's it. Of course, you'd have to be able to, at very least, write iOS apps. I mean, not having on a platform an ability to write apps for that platform is an issue. It's a drawback.
But like with Apple Pencil, with your fingers, with the keyboard?
Well, I think, coders don't want to write with a pencil. They're going to want to write with a keyboard. Yeah. I'm not saying to go so far as to put a command line on it. There's definitely a demarcation between a computer and an iPad. I don't know why you wouldn't. It wouldn't be hard, I don't think, since they already have Xcode running on an M1. You've got now enough RAM. I mean, that's the argument for putting more RAM in there. And more storage. I don't think it would be hard to put.
It's not written in UIKit yet. None of those apps. They're all written in a combination of native code.
So that's what you'd have to rewrite.
AppKit and ProKit.
You'd have to rewrite the UI.
The UI and the entire app logic.
Yeah. I mean, I would make it look the same. Maybe there isn't that much demand for that. What about Final Cut? Is that hard to do?
I mean, LumaFusion shows a way that you can do it. It's just a question of, again, is it a companion app? Is it an app where you're editing on your iMac and you pick up your iPad and you go sit on the sofa and keep editing, then you go back to your iMac? It's like the work. My dream, and it's a dream I think a lot of YouTubers have, is that everything is stored in the cloud. And like, if you and I are working on a project, you can access it from your iPad or Mac. I can access it from my iPad or Mac, and we can do it like a Google Doc. Where we're all collaborating and we just pick the interface. If you want to sit there and slice with your pencil and I want to sit there and slice with my keyboard, we should just be able to do it. That to me is like final evolution for Final Cut.
Well, and as we've seen with Affinity Photo and Lightroom and Photoshop, Touch is actually a great interface for photographers. I would imagine Touch would be a good interface for video editing. I think it is.
LumaFusion is great.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a little. You could see my confusion. What is Apple doing? I guess. Go ahead.
I have a question. Is how big is the market for this? This so overserves for me. I have no interest in this machine.
It's not the iPad market.
And Steve Jobs' vision was to make a really easy to use computer for everybody. And this is definitely going to increase the average sales price of the machines, and that's going to be good for Apple investors. But
and we should say this starts at $1,100. You don't have to buy. You can get many. Right. You can at least get the screen for $1,100. Not obviously the more RAM. You will get an M1 processor. Is it, Renee, is the same processor across all the iPad pros?
Identical processor. Yeah. They're just not using one of the Thunderbolt ports and all the Mac-specific IP.
And can I, that's the other thing. If you wanted to put Xcode on there, you'd probably want to drive a bigger monitor. You can do that now, right?
Yeah.
Plug a monitor right into that port. Actually, what I would do, this is getting wacky, because I have an Otherworld Computing Thunderbolt 3 dock for my iMac. I could plug that in to my iPad Pro, get a monitor out. With the Ethernet would work, right? I mean, it depends what drivers are available on iOS, iPad OS, but most of that would work, right?
Yeah, it all works. Yeah.
So I can use the iPad, walk around, shoot my movie on it, sit down, plug in the dock, and now I've got a workstation.
Yeah, and you can use
wild.
MVNE drives now, which was my big complaint. I couldn't use those on the previous iPad Pro.
So I could, if they have a Type-C interface, I could plug them in. And it would either be Thunderbolt 3, or which would be what you want for the throughput, or it could be USB-C.
I mean, my big hope here is that, and I think Apple's been working on this for years, they just haven't found something they like, is my big hope is they're working on an Apple OS, which will supersede Mac OS and iOS and just be endpoint independent. It doesn't matter what you're running it on the end. It does cloud connection for you, does local authentication for you, and then it'll work on any device regardless of size. They've been doing that with Swift since the beginning. They now have Swift UI. Just have a Swift ISA and a Swift operating system, just call it whatever you want, but don't put Mac OS on a system that was never designed for. It's ancient, it's old, it's big.
Don't you feel like, though, that's the mistake Microsoft made with Windows 8 is combining a tablet interface with a desktop, but you think Apple could do it better?
Well, but they spent 3 years in the desert trying to make Windows touch optimized from Windows 8 to Windows 10. And Apple already has a touch optimized operating system. It makes zero sense to take resources off of iPad OS and make them touch optimized Mac OS. But to make something eventually in the next 5 to 10 years that replaces all that old code with new optimized code for M1 and future devices, including things we wear on our face, I think that makes all the sense in the world.
I just thought of another good use. If you're a photographer and you tether as you're shooting in studio, you don't need a desktop anymore or a laptop to tether. You could tether to the iPad, and you'd have this great display.
Yeah, the display is a big deal.
Yeah.
But again, how big is that market? You know, it's us sitting around talking about it, and every Apple geek who has the money to spend is going to want it. But it's a niche market that they're talking about, and it's a niche market that they are supplying to. You know, to a certain extent, you look at what they've done with this, and the design and the approach and the power that was in the iPad Air 4 makes a lot more sense. You know, you were kind of looking at this going, why would you want an iPad Pro at the time when they released the iPad Air on the low end, and now you kind of know why they did that. It's a perfect stepping stone to it.
Well, this pays down that. Like, Apple has a very big history of making the expensive stuff for the pros who will buy it and using that to pay down new technologies. So like the mini LED in this, the price of this is going to pay for the mini LED to start ramping up production until they can make a lot of it, and then it'll go into cheaper devices. So like 2 or 3 years from now, the iPad Air will have a mini LED display and the lower end Macs and all of those things. So I think it's just for them to pay off all their production work.
So were you guys as like befuddled as I was with the announcement? Like, who? I guess it's the question you keep asking, Dwight. Who the hell is this for? Who's going to buy this? Or maybe it's Philip. You're saying that. I mean, there's still a $329 iPad, which is probably the one I would recommend to almost everybody who says, "Should I get an iPad?" I'd say yes. Get the $329 one.
It makes me wonder how much investment Apple is actually going to make in those pro apps for the iPad Pro, if it's a very small market.
Maybe you're right. Maybe there is no point in doing it. The other question
I think that filters down, though, too. Like, they'll make those pro apps and use these things to sell them off to the early pros, and then those will filter down to the lower devices.
Yeah, it might just be a handful of us.
It's going to get better and better every year.
Saying, well, where's my Final Cut? Where's my Xcode? Do you think this new stuff is going to be in short supply at all, Renee? Did they say anything about that because of the chip shortage?
I don't think Apple. So Apple basically funds the new processors. Like those processors are incredibly expensive, and there is no one else in the world who makes as many. I'm gonna ape Ben Beharan here for a minute. There's nobody else in the world who makes as many premium devices as Apple. Apple makes more premium Macs than Samsung makes premium phones. Just to give you some idea of their scale. So Taiwan Semiconductor wants to make 5 nanometers. Apple's the only customer they can do that with. They're the only ones who will prepay by that many and will have those margins. So Apple basically funds those processes. So they will be the last ones to ever run out of chips, and they can also vary. Like iPhone will get preference over like a Mac Mini, for example, if they ever had to juggle a load. So I think we might see a couple weeks or a month longer in like the way that the delays work out. People who want to buy them immediately will get them, but it'll go to a month out, 2 months out, probably faster and to longer lengths. But they'll get that back into alignment really, really fast.
Actually, we are seeing that because it's been a long time since an Apple event has announced a product that you can't even pre-order for a month or a week or two and can't get till next month, end of next month. I mean, we're already seeing that, right? They would love to sell these now.
Part of this is the built-in COVID stuff. Like the iPhones, it took an extra month for the other 2 iPhones, and the iPad Air was announced a month before you could get that. I think that is factoring in all of 2020, 2021 as well.
We got to take a break, but I want you before we take the break, show me the purple iPhone. I don't understand it, but show it to me anyway.
Purple iPhone case.
What? It was kind of off.
iPhone.
It was a weird thing to suddenly throw in. It was like the second or third thing they talked about. Oh, and now there's a purple iPhone. I don't understand.
Usually they do red. Like usually every spring they do red,
but that's
they
product
don't make a big
red.
deal out of of it.
Yeah.
They have
but
red.
they did red
They have
early
product
this
red
year.
Oh.
Yeah.
So this product purple.
And purple was the code name for the original iPhone, so it's always going to have a soft spot. It was a purple project.
So wait a minute, the one in your left hand is last year's?
This is last year's.
Okay.
And this is this year's.
So in a way, it was weird that they didn't have a purple iPhone at launch.
They vary up the colors every year. Like they didn't have yellow this year, I think, as well, or orange. They had orange last year and they didn't. I think it's just they bring some colors in and take some colors out. But they're very colorful Apple again, Leo.
They are. Look at those iMacs. Mm-hmm. That orange iMac is orange. That is
it's tangerine.
Unapologetically orange.
I saw several iPhone 12 Pro and Pro Max users complaining that they didn't extend purple into the Pro line.
Oh, man.
But, they like to have kind of very somber colors in the Pro line. So.
Well,
these
are not the Pro lines anyway at this point, right? Even this iMac is no more powerful than a MacBook or a Mini with the M1 in any way, right?
Yes.
It's just,
although that's pretty good power, but it's
it's great.
It's as far as they can go.
But it's just a new form factor, in effect, a new form factor for what you could buy with a MacBook Air, MacBook Pro 13, and a MacBook.
You have a 15-watt iPad chip and an iMac, Leo. That kind of dents my brain a little bit.
It's amazing. But and again, and your point is well taken, Philip. I might be one of the small group of people who are saying, but where's the Pro gear? I want the Pro gear. And I guess
WWDC.
There was a bit of a leak. We'll talk about that in a bit. One of Apple's suppliers has been hacked, and the hacking group R-Evil has been leaking out documents saying, Apple, you got to pay us $50 million if you don't want any more of your precious secrets leaked. Did Apple?
That was a one-day
process. We're not paying you.
Yeah.
That was a one-day story because I assume it got settled very quietly.
You think so? There's not been anything since?
Yeah, I think that the Apple sent in its Israeli
commandos.
Hack guy.
Yeah. The Mossad went over and said, "It would be nice if you would stop this."
I have one point about the colors. One of the sites, 9to5Mac or Mac Rumors, ran a poll. Which color are you going to buy? Pink was, I don't remember the order, but pink was at the bottom and purple was second to bottom.
That's only because no one admits to wanting a pink iPad. I mean, iMac.
Justine's going to buy them all. We know that. She's going to have one in every room.
Pink, I should point out, used to be the color for boys until about 100 years ago. So there.
But the red on the back is hot.
Well, it's also two-tone. Notice the fronts are lighter than the backs. The light will be duplicated in the keyboard and the mouse.
I like the backs better.
I like the rich color.
Me too.
I've also seen complaints about him having white bezels, which
that's annoying. I agree. I complain.
That is annoying. And with the black bezel, the colors kind of have more contrast to them. But with a white bezel, they won't just visually, the whole thing won't pop the way it does on the. I bought a 2020.
You couldn't afford the Pro one.
I bought a 2020 27-inch iMac shortly after it came out, and I was a little bit nervous because they had they had mentioned the M1 about not getting one, but I'm so happy now that I did what I did after seeing these, because I really did want the bigger one, and I'm really interested to see what they do if they eventually come up with a 30 or 32-inch iMac and what that looks like. That what they may do is bring back the Pro name for the large screen. I would not be surprised.
Yeah, this is 24 inches, so this is the replacement for the 21-inch base model iMac.
The rumor was there'd be a 32-inch big one, and in fact, I had somebody email me, and I'm using this. I'm answering this person's email in my newsletter on Tuesday, but they said basically they were holding out for the 27-inch. What should they do? Or the bigger one, what should they do? And I say, go ahead and buy a 27-inch one. They're great.
It really looks like a tablet on a stand, to be honest to you.
It is.
It's 11.5 millimeters.
It's a non-touchscreen tablet on a stand.
Did you get to see these in person, Renee?
No, not yet.
I guess all your briefings were virtual. Wow,
I'm not traveling. Well, the border's still closed.
Oh, that's right. You're not. We cannot go to Canada. You guys don't.
We even closed the border to Ontario. You can't go from Quebec to Ontario anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, let me take a little break and come back. We will. I do want to talk a little bit about AirTags. I think.
A lot.
Okay, we do want to talk a lot about AirTags. I think there is. Oh, look, he's even got those. Oh, they're so cute.
I found them.
There, I think, are some misapprehensions about what they're for, how to use them. They are not for tracking your children or pets.
Or your husband.
Or your husband.
You can.
We'll talk about that in a second. I want to take a break. Okay. Our show. Actually, I'm thrilled because I want to welcome back a sponsor that has been with us for many, many years. I've been with them for even longer. I've been an Audible subscriber since the year 2000. It is the audio bookstore par excellence. If you have never listened to an audiobook, I figure if you listen to audiobooks, you already are an Audible subscriber. I mean, why wouldn't you be? Although they have some new features that really make Audible even more appealing than ever before. But if you've never listened to an audiobook, I know all of you have. Anybody who listens to podcasts probably is comfortable with that idea. Let me reassure you, it's read to you by some of the best readers in the world. Many of Audible's productions actually are multi-voice productions. One of my favorite audiobooks, which is one of my favorite novels, I think it was my favorite novel of 2019, Lincoln and the Bardo, is an amazing audiobook. I would argue it's actually better in audio than it would be in reading. Lincoln and the Bardo is about Abe Lincoln. After his son dies, he kind of visits the graveyard. They have different narrators for every voice in the graveyard, and some of the narrators are like Lena Dunham and David Sedaris and Nick Offerman. Our voices, Carrie Brownstein. I could play a little bit of this for you just so you can hear it.
16. An exceedingly tall and unkempt fellow was making his way toward us through the darkness.
He's a ghost.
This was highly irregular. It was after hours. The front gate would be locked.
The boy had been delivered only that day. That is to say, the man had
David
most
Sedaris.
likely been here.
It's wonderful. It comes alive. I am a huge Audible fan. Whether you're driving, you're cooking, you're cleaning your house, whether you're just relaxing, you can listen to audio from Audible. Podcasts now, they also have original entertainment from top celebrity creators. They actually even have stage plays. If you can't go to the theater, you can listen to the theater with Audible. And a new thing that I think is really fantastic called Audible Plus. Your subscription gives you full access to every audiobook in the catalog. The whole idea is to give members a chance to listen to and discover new favorites and explore different formats, like the Words Plus Music series, which pairs an album with the story of the album. It's just, I love the Words Plus Music. There's podcasts. There's some of the readings I know a lot of you are fans of Neil Gaiman's Sandman comics. The Neil Gaiman Sandman production is the best radio theater you've ever heard in your life. You can listen to all you want with Audible Plus. Thousands and thousands of popular audiobooks, original entertainment podcasts, including ad-free versions of your favorite shows, plus exclusive series, all available to download or stream so you can listen anywhere, anytime, on any device, and you'll never lose your spot. To use your Audible membership, you do need the Audible app, but the app is great. They've improved it over the years. It's free. You can install it on all your smartphones, all your tablets. Listening to Audible will make you feel inspired, connected, and it's all available in a single app. Audible Plus, your playlist for life. The Dark Tower series, fantastic. The Sookie Stackhouse novels that were the inspiration for that great HBO vampire series. It's all there. I live in Audible, and I am a huge fan. Right now I'm listening to Barack Obama's Promised Land, and he reads it, which I think really gives it some real value. It's like you're having a conversation with the former president, listening to his thoughts about his presidency, and he goes step by step through the election process and then entering the White House and all the things that happened. It's fascinating stuff. What are you waiting for? Delve into your next title on Audible with Audible Plus. Go to audible.com/twit. New members can try Audible Plus 30 days for free. Download the Audible app and get started. Free trial awaits you. You could also text TWIT to 500-500. AUDIBLE, audible.com/Twitter. Text TWIT to 500-500 to start your free trial today. You're gonna love Audible. If you're not, I can't imagine anybody who listens to our shows isn't already a subscriber, because we've been talking about Audible for forever, since day one. But if you're not, here's a chance to get a free trial. Audible.com/twit. We thank Audible so much for supporting This Week in Tech. We thank you, dear listener, for supporting us by going to that address, audible.com/twit, or texting TWIT to 500-500. That way they know you saw it here. Audible. Love, love, love Audible. Love them. We were famous for years for our 15-minute Audible commercials. And that's because Andy and everybody would jump in with their audiobooks. Anybody want to mention an audiobook that you like a lot lately? Yes, Philip.
Well, I just finished Bleak House. I like a good 3 to 4 week book.
A little Dickens.
It was wonderful. He did get paid by the word, but
yeah, because they were serialized, right, in the early yeah.
Now I'm in the middle of I never thought I'd like this, but John Boehner's In the House. He was such a jerk when he was Speaker of the House, but he's really salty and it's expletive filled, and he tells stories on all the horrible members that he had to work with, the nutcases in the House, he called them. I'm like you, Leo. I have Audible on every time I step out the house. And I
even have it out in the house. Lisa and I have gotten in a habit we kind of trying to get away from watching TV, so we'll go to bed early and listen to a book together. And it's so fun. It's so great. You know, and the Boehner one is a good example. Same thing with the Obama, whatever side of the aisle you're on. These guys now are no longer in the lists, so they can be a little bit more honest about what's going on. And it's really great to go inside and hear what these people were thinking at this time.
He reads his own. And you find out why he was always so tan, because he did nothing but play golf. And,
he was tan, wasn't he?
and why he sometimes slurred, because his grandfather started a bar that his father also ran, where he worked. He comes from a big drinking family. So.
Well, I noticed on the cover he's got a glass of wine, which is not the typical author picture. I'm having a little wine while I tell you this story about being what was he? He was Speaker of the House. Speaker of the House. Yeah.
He's kind of the Dean Martin of politics, you know.
There you go. Very good.
Who I remember very well quit because he couldn't take it. It was like so frustrating for him.
Right.
The knuckleheads. He called them the knuckleheads.
The knuckleheads. I love it. It's fun when you retire. You can finally be honest, which is why I've been retired for years. Let's see. Let's talk about. You said lots to say about the AirTags. It took them a year to come up.
At least.
Did they ever explain why they've been sitting on these for a year?
Maybe they told Renee. I just want to say about these things. I think they are the hit of the show.
Really?
And that Apple's going to sell tens of millions of these things, 100 million maybe in the first year. It's as fast as they can make them. I mean, they have 1 billion iPhone owners. Who's not going to want 4 of these, for their dog, their kid, their husband, and their backpack? I can see this being a $3 billion business before the end of the year.
Interesting prediction. I ordered. This is the only thing from Tuesday that you could order. I had to get up at 5 a.m. to do it, but I ordered 4 of them. 1 for my kid, 1 for my wife, 2 for me. And the 4-pack's $25 each, $100, which is that's what everybody else charges for a Bluetooth tracker. But this does have that secret sauce because there's 1 billion iPhones out there, and every one of them will phone home if they see your keys, right?
The secret sauce maybe, but the most annoying thing about it is that you can't simply attach it by itself to something. You have to spend more money in order to buy a holder, a fob for it to hook it to anything. Their own products start at $25 and go up to the $400 Hermes strap. And fortunately, Belkin has stepped in and has a $13
They got the
strap.
the cheaper
but
one.
I want to see if I can get maybe a little hole punch, and try.
No.
Ain't gonna work.
I know. It goes right through the battery.
Renee should explain the real secret sauce, which is the precision of the location
and the UWB.
Right.
So right now, I think my theory is that we're really concerned about antitrust because remember, the Tile CEO, Tile makes a competing very similar Bluetooth tracker. The Tile CEO testified in front of Congress ago. They opened up Find My. And interestingly, Tile did not sign up for this. So those billion phones will benefit anybody who is a partner in the Find My process. Currently, Van Moof electric bicycles, a couple of models. Belkin's got a device. And Chipolo, which is a tracker-like, Tile-like, AirTags-like competitor. All of those will benefit from the billion phones in your pocket. But there is another feature that only Apple can do, and Renee Ritchie will tell us all about that.
Yeah, I think you're right about the antitrust. I think also just quickly, Tile would. I always have this problem when people who fill obvious gaps in the market get upset when those obvious gaps in the market get filled. This is something that Apple can do really well, but Apple will never address cross-platform, for example, and a lot of families have big gadget love, like they have Android and a non-successful launch.
Except that I lose my keys in the house more than anywhere else.
We're the exception, Leo.
Okay.
It's our Apple TV remotes that, but yeah, so if you have a U1 enabled device, which is perplexingly still just the iPhone 11 and iPhone 12, even the latest iPad, as far as I can tell, doesn't have a U1 chip built into it. But if you have either of those new iPhones, you'll be able to do, if you have just a regular device, you'll be able to do Bluetooth location, which means you're in Bluetooth radius of the device. And that's mostly good for general vicinity. Like if you left it way somewhere else, or you want to try to whittle it down, depending on reflection and, signal strength and all those things, to a room in your house. But if you have one of those U1 devices, it will give you precise spatial positioning, and you have an interface that will point you to the directions like, yeah, it's under that sofa cushion over there. Remember where you fell asleep watching TV last night, where you fell asleep watching Captain America and the Winter Soldier last night. It's right under that.
Is there any reason a third party participating in Find My couldn't do that, though? I mean, I could make a little UWB pointer for my Chipolo tag, or no? Apple doesn't own that.
No, but I mean, you would just use Apple's. Like as long as you had a U1 device with you, they would just use Apple's as part of the Find My network. Right. It's not exclusive to the Apple version.
So Chipolo could build a U1 UWB chip into a device of theirs, right?
Yeah, the only things that are exclusive to Apple is really like the tight integration with iOS, and also the trust relationship a lot of people have with Apple, because when Apple does these things, they don't care who you are, they don't care what you do. They have a very good policy around data retention and data exploitation and those sorts of things. So if you care deeply about that, you're going to want to buy the Apple version. But other vendors can do more things in those areas.
So they're giving with Find My, they're really I think it's clearly responding to the antitrust issues, and they're saying, look, we're going to open it up, and you can do 90% of what you would do with an AirTag, you could do yourself.
I think it's half that. And I think also that Apple's never going to make certain products. They are always very tightly focused. They make fewer products than a lot of us would like them to make. And it's like they're never going to make every case. So they have an MFI program for cases. They're never going to make every HomeKit accessory or any HomeKit accessory. So they have that program. And they realize they're never going to make a bike with Find My on it. So it's better to license that out and let other people make those things. And that makes the value, it gives Apple a more valuable ecosystem. It gives those companies an easier to implement solution. And it gives us more products to use with the iPhones, which they want to sell more of.
I'm glad I got up at 5 a.m. because apparently the ship dates have been going farther and farther and farther back. They may not. They've had a year to manufacture these. They may not have made enough. Philip, did you buy some?
Sure, I bought 4, and I got a couple of little dongles.
Yeah, me too.
We've got the perfect transition to antitrust if you want, because Amy Klobuchar, who knows how to engineer these things, made sure she had the general counsel of Tile testifying to Congress the day after Apple introduced these.
Right.
And that I forget the woman's name, but she said that Apple, first of all, worked with them, did everything they wanted, encouraged them to build this device, and then pulled them off the store. And she says they actually prohibited Tile from using I forget the initials, but the thing that tells you it's under the pillow.
Oh, they said Apple will not let us use UWB.
Yeah,
interesting.
At the time, but I think since then, from there, she was recounting previous conversations.
Right.
But I think since then, Apple have said that they are developing this program where you can.
Right.
So
this is Kirsten Daru. The Find My was open before this. This was testimony the day after Spring Loaded. It was Wednesday.
Right.
Right.
So she would have, but maybe she's saying, well, that's what happened then.
And she gave some other reason as to why her company didn't want to be in Find My, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was the kind of data that Apple was going to get from their customers, but they would get nothing from iPhone users.
Daru told the senators, Apple launched this product, as a quote, and its competing app with a knowledge of a lot of our information about our business. Mm-hmm. This is that old Microsoft technique where you go and say, look, maybe we want to acquire you or partner with you. Tell us everything. And then see ya, go develop a competing product. They know how our devices do in stores. They know who our customers are. They know our subscription take rates. They know what features people use. I mean, the list goes on and on. I guess that begs the question, well, why'd you tell them all that stuff? Tile CEO CJ Prober issued a statement right after the AirTag announcement on Tuesday. Quote, we welcome competition as long as it's fair competition. Unfortunately, given Apple's well-documented history of using its platform advantage to unfairly limit competition for its products, we're skeptical. So some of this is proactive, like, well, it hasn't happened yet, but we're not convinced.
I feel the same way about Samsung smart tags. I always wonder if this is just
because Samsung has their own thing.
General issue.
The scary thing for Tile and everybody else is the billion phones. Apple, there's Tracker always, when they used to be an advertiser, they would always talk about their big tracker network, how many trackers they'd sold, but that comes nowhere near the instant network that Apple offers because of all the iPhones out there.
Yeah, I think Tile is toast, and they know it. Apple and antitrust, I think they should be very careful. The Senate on both sides of the aisle were clearly out to get Apple that day. I forget who made the summation, but it was something like I've been watching Apple and Google defend the patently indefensible.
Yeah.
That if you offered these facts to a law school class on antitrust, you'd be laughed out of the room because it's textbook. So clearly violates.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole thing is how you define the market. And the Senate and the House seem to be going along with the definition that if you own the platform, and then you have a monopoly in that platform, and the rules of antitrust start applying, and you're not allowed to abuse that your power. I mean, I have a running argument with my readers who are all Apple investors, and most of them multi-millionaires from the Apple shares they bought.
It's hard not to love a company that's made you rich, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I've watched too many antitrust cases. I remember the Google case very well, the Microsoft case very well, and I remember the Apple Books case very well. And if I learned anything, it's that analogies are cheap. You can talk about railroads, you can talk about ham sandwiches, but you can use them on either side of the argument. And that the history of antitrust legislation, how it's been applied, is so convoluted and complicated, and it can be used to support either side. So I think it really comes down to the will of Congress, and I think I'm seeing which way the wind's blowing.
Did Tile invent Bluetooth trackers? Were they the first? I mean,
they had 90% of the market.
Okay, so I could see why they might be a little concerned. By the way, this is not just Apple. The new president has already put a number of people who are on the record as wanting to break up big tech in important positions in the White House. Here's a Washington Post piece that came out just a couple of days ago, how big tech got so big. It's funny because, of course, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, but it's clear that they are not beholden to Jeff Bezos. And what they very clearly demonstrate in this article with lots of kind of well-done graphs is that Amazon, Google, Apple, and Facebook have all used acquisitions to enter markets and dominate. That Amazon's a perfect example. It was a bookstore, but via massive acquisitions, basically became dominant in many, many different businesses. David Cicciolini, who's the chairman of the House Antitrust Subcommittee, said these monopolies have exploited the weakness of the existing law and lax enforcement to maintain and expand their market dominance by buying up or burying those they perceive as competitive threats. And Cicciolini is one of the guys who's beating a drum to either break these companies up or
too,
divest.
Because I think Apple and these companies should be terrified, but not because there is absolutely some legitimacy to this, but the legitimacy of this has nothing to do with what's going to happen in the U.S. or in the EU. And we've seen over and over again how the antitrust against Microsoft handed WebKit and actually Chromium, a browser market, it ended up destroying rendering engines, not enabling competition. And the Apple iBooks thing, it cemented Amazon's total monopoly over books. It didn't do anything to really help antitrust. They were just very narrowly focused on something they thought was bad, and they don't have the nuance to really understand this stuff. And that to me is way more terrifying than an effective antitrust investigation.
This is the graph for Amazon. Again, I think it's fascinating. The Washington Post is publishing this, which it becomes a clear indictment, a very clear indictment of Amazon, acquiring new businesses, killing competition by doing so. The acquisitions on the left, the acquisitions on the left are the original business, online sales. The acquisitions on the right are new sectors, and they start very slowly. But as the years go by, fewer and fewer purchases on the left and more purchases on the right as they really expand out into new businesses. And I think the Post makes a very good argument that Amazon is acting as a trust. Exactly what antitrust law was created to stop.
And you have to remember that Apple's online store and the root of it was an acquisition they made that became the iTunes software, that became the iTunes store where you bought music for $1 that eventually expanded into apps. And the root of Apple's growth has been that initial iTunes software. That was
isn't that interesting?
Sound Jam.
Yeah, and frankly, when it started, the record company said, we don't want you selling $99 singles, and Apple said, we're gonna. When it started, I remember we were talking about it. It was a fraction of overall sales, and now it's completely dominant. It's like, in fact, its dominance is about to be eclipsed, I should point out, by streamers. People don't buy music anymore.
Yep.
They rent it. And Apple was late to that game. I don't know how well Apple Music is doing compared to, say, Spotify, but Spotify's...
About the third the size, I think.
Yeah, Spotify's completely dominant in this.
But someone in the chat room is saying...
done a good job.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Ben Thompson is doing a really good job showing some of the nuance here, and there's no easy answers because in some cases, the platform vendor can make a solution that is way better for the customer than a third party. There's just things that they can offer, but in other cases, it's redundant or it is anti-competitive, and it's hard to fine-tune those things. What is of added value to everybody, and what is anti-competitive? And you can't sort of put a hammer to the entire thing.
Yeah, I mean, as a consumer, I'm thinking AirTags are superior. They're just great, and it's because of the Apple ecosystem that they're great.
And Apple's privacy stance. I mean, they did such profound privacy engineering and balancing theft versus stalking and all these things that Tiles had a decade to do and never even really thought about. And Apple has deeply considered so many aspects of this that it is genuinely a better, more innovative, more thoughtful, more considerate, higher value product that wouldn't exist if we applied blanket anti-competition rules to these things.
That's actually a very good point. I mean, for instance, one of the concerns, and this really is a concern with Tracker, Tile, Chipolo, whatever, is, a bad boyfriend could drop it in somebody's purse and use it to stalk them. But if you're tracking an AirTag, unlike these other tags, it beeps the whole time. So it announces itself. Not
the whole time, but it will beep, yeah.
Yeah, it announces itself. It says, hey, I'm in your purse. And
it'll tell you how to take it apart and take the battery out if you don't want it there.
Yeah. I mean, they've clearly, maybe that's because the climate has changed now, but clearly those kinds of things.
But it'll also only do that when it hits significant locations for you. So, for example, if you're a thief and you take it, it's not going to alert you immediately, so you can still track something that's stolen. But as you approach a significant location, it'll tell you.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like especially if you start approaching your home, it'll start telling you that you're being tracked. So they're trying very hard to balance the utility of the Find My with the protection of the stalking, and that can change. Like they can fine-tune that more when they've got a million people testing it in the real world.
That's kind of critical because I was thinking initially, well, that just means you can't use this to track a stolen product because it's going to say, I'm stolen and I'm being tracked, and the thief's going to go, good, throw that away. But you're saying it won't go off initially.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. So they are trying to make it useful.
What's a significant location?
So if you have location services on your phone, it'll start storing. You can go in and look at it under settings, locations, the privacy part, and it'll show you a list of places that you go to frequently. Like the home is the most significant location, but if it has a work location or it has a school location or it just has probably like a coffee shop that you go to 4 days out of the week, anything that your behavioral patterns have shown as a significant place to you.
And this is the person who if you have an iPhone and it's dropped in your purse and it's your significant locations, the tracker talks to the iPhone even though it's not associated with that iPhone.
Yes.
Okay, so that's interesting. So I'm being stalked. I go home. The tracker, which is not my AirTag, in my purse, and I didn't know about, goes, oh, you're home.
Yes.
And it'll beep.
Yeah.
How loud is the beep?
Pop up on your thing. It's like a chirp. It's like a beep.
It's like the annoying smoke alarm battery chirp, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's just designed, like it's not designed to frustrate you, but it's designed to tell you that it's there.
Alert you.
And if you have an Android phone, like it's not just an iPhone, it's NFC readable. So if you touch any NFC reader to it, it'll give you that pop-up.
That's another thing that's kind of cool. You can immediately find the provenance of the AirTag you just found.
Yes.
By scanning it using
and
NFC.
If it's lost, it'll show you the lost message. And if you're abusing it, it does, like when you first enable it, it says this is now bound to your Apple ID, so that in the event of any like lawsuits or criminal action of you doing anything illegal with it, those two things are linked and they will be able to find you.
Yeah. Yeah, so Tile should be terrified. Basically, Tile's right. Yeah. They should be very scared.
I can imagine all kinds of little loopholes emerging as a million people use these, and Apple. We're going to have a lot of stories about someone found a wormhole through their.
Well, isn't that funny? Because Tile and Tracker have been around forever. But it's like insignificant. And now it's Apple. That's a big deal, and all of a sudden it's a big story if it doesn't work right.
Yeah, Tile just doesn't have
I want
that
people
network.
testing the Samsung stuff as much as they're testing the Apple stuff, because I hate the fact that I love that Apple gets pounded on. Like when Touch ID came out, it got pounded on, and I knew that it was secure. But when everybody copied it, they didn't, and it turned out like HTC and Samsung were keeping full res photographs of our fingerprints in a world readable directory. Please pound on that stuff too.
Yeah. There's lots more that Apple announced, and we could go on and on. I don't want to turn this into an Apple show. We certainly will. Renee will be on Mac Break Weekly on Tuesday, and we'll spend more time. There's the podcast subscription story. The thing they led off with, which I thought was really interesting, about gender equity in the use of the Apple Card. I thought that was just fascinating. It is too bad, though. You bring this up, Philip. They didn't put AirTags in the remote, the new Apple TV.
So frustrating.
What the hell? That's the thing I lose the most.
I'm trying to understand what goes on within Apple headquarters, where they've got one team that's been working for at least a year on the tracking device, and another team that's been working, I hope, for many years to make a better remote, and that the two didn't know about the other. Don't they have meetings together?
Or they did, and there was
reported that it was in the controller, right? That was the other thing. So I'm hoping there's like, is there a controller Pro Max that's going to come out with the higher end Apple TV?
I do think that, thank God they replaced the remote. Although you wrote a piece, Dwight, defending that crappy, the worst remote ever made, the Apple TV Siri remote. Tell me.
Here's why. So here's why. The naked Apple remote, which I have here, is pretty bad on its own, mainly because the top part and the bottom part feel the same when you pick it up.
But one's going to do something if you touch it.
Right. But almost from day one, mainly because I understood it was as glass on the surface of this, and I was worried about it breaking, I ordered this thing that's a case for the remote. And not only does it protect it, but the case changes the feel of it. So this is rubber, this is silicone, there's the touchpad. It has a lanyard, which makes it difficult to lose. And when I get one of my 4 AirTags, I'm going to put it on this lanyard so that I will have AirTags on my remote.
You are smart.
It's much better. Because of the silicone, it's easier to hold it in the right orientation, so that when you use your thumb on it, your tracking is more accurate.
It is.
And if you go
the case,
if
a remote's only good because you bought an $8 silicone sheath, then there's something wrong with it.
It fixes the problems and actually makes it a good remote.
I'm going to buy 3 of these right now, because even if I get a new Apple TV, I still have plenty of those.
I use a rubber band.
A rubber band would do it. Yeah, they're smart. Yeah.
I'm still going to buy the new remote because it has a mute button. The case doesn't come with a mute button.
Oh, there's a lot of benefits. It also has the new remote does put the Siri button on the side, because I tell you, half the time I'll hit the remote and the Siri will say, "Yeah, what? So this is, by the way, from Alago, which makes so many great little silicone devices, including my little iMac that I put my watch in to charge it at night. So I have a little...
when I got this, again, it was to protect it. And I was reading all these things, people complaining about the remote, and I was going, what are they complaining about? And then I realized I started using it without the case, and I realized what the complaints were about. This case fixes probably most people's complaints.
The other thing the new Apple TV does is really interesting. We talked to Scott Wilkinson, my home theater guy, on this. Is you can calibrate it with the iPhone. Calibrate you're not calibrating your TV, but you're calibrating the output of the Apple TV based on the capabilities of your TV. You put the iPhone up next to the TV screen. They showed this. Now, what Scott explained is that's not going to change the brightness or the contrast settings, which are arguably probably the most important settings on the TV. You can't change that from the Apple TV. You're only changing color reproduction, but at least the color reproduction will be more accurate. Thanks to this, you have to have, and it'll work with an older Apple TV. I understand.
Yes, it's part of tvOS 14.5, so it'll work even on the Apple TV HD, which is the one I still have.
That's pretty cool. The new Apple TV also, the rumor was going to support high frame rate, 120 frames per second. It does not. It's 60 frames per second. That's still high frame rate.
I think we're getting another one. At least I hope we're getting another one. This was such a spec bump. Like the A12 is. Single core is better than the A10X. GPU isn't any better. It'll do things better like compositing HDR, which they need to do. It'll do better for some games. But there's been so many rumors of a higher end Apple TV HomePod sort of melded device that'll have higher capacities. And then I hope there's a Siri Remote Plus Max Pro that has a to go with it.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's an interesting thought. This is not the high-end Apple TV we'd heard rumors about. This is just a spec bump.
That's going to be too expensive. I think they had to mitigate. Like, this isn't cheap enough either. Like, I think if they were going to go with an A12, they should have slashed it down to $99. Like, I hate saying it's too expensive because I think like you never know what it actually costs to make these things. But I think like it's a disqualifying price tag for a lot of people still, given the competition in the market. But this at $99 and then a decked out super Apple TV with a lot of the HomePod features and a gaming focus with a gamepad and all of those features. I think having the lower version allows them to have the higher version for the fanatics.
The lower version is twice as expensive as the Roku. So even the lower version is expensive for a streaming TV
I think that's
device.
their netbook thing. It's like they don't care if there's a cheap netbook because they don't want to make that product. But you still like the HomePod is too expensive for what like people wouldn't buy it at that price, whether it was worth that price in terms of the technology inside it. Yeah, but nobody would want to buy it.
A
So that's the problem.
$400
Yeah, it was
speaker.
the wrong product for the market.
Yeah, Google had the same problem. They had a high-end home Max, and as good as it was, nobody wanted it. Let's take a little break because I want to show you how to save some money on your cell phone bill right now with our sponsor, Mint Mobile. Oh, I love these guys. After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if you've learned anything, there's always a catch. So when Mint Mobile said, hey, Leo, we're going to do a $15 a month premium wireless service, I thought, yeah, there's some fine print there somewhere. But you know what? I've been using it, and it makes sense, and there isn't any fine print. There's no catch. It really works. The secret sauce to Mint Mobile is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. No retail stores, which means no crazy overhead costs that get passed down to you in the form of mystery fees. They even have an unlimited plan. And by the way, all their plans include unlimited nationwide text and talk delivered on the nation's largest 5G network, high-speed data. But they even have an unlimited plan that's only $30 a month. Mint Mobile is so great. Now, the $15 plan is 4 gigs a month. For most people, that's enough data. That's all they ever have to spend. You can use your own phone if you want. They'll send you a SIM that you put in the phone, absolutely free. You could port your phone number over it so your phone number doesn't change. Your contacts go along with the phone. They also sell phones. In fact, I got a great iPhone SE from them for, I think it was $15 a month. So 15 plus 15. For $30, I got a new phone and really great wireless service. That's a third of what I'm paying just for the service alone on the big guys. And of course, if you're not 100% satisfied, Mint Mobile has you covered with a 7-day money-back guarantee. $15 a month, premium wireless, unlimited talk and text, plus high-speed data. Switch now to the Mint Mobile platform. You will be glad you did, and it really makes me wonder why anybody's paying any more. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door free, go to mintmobile.com/twit. mintmobile.com/twit. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month. mintmobile.com/twit. Thank you, Mint Mobile, for supporting This Week in Tech. I think, as I remember, the court has given approval to go ahead. One more. I mean, I guess we're still doing Apple stories. It was an Apple week. Oh, one more thing I wanted to mention before I get to the courts. They showed a little Ted Lasso still during the Apple event. And at the bottom of the still, there is Ted Lasso's secret shortbread, makes about one box, and they cut off the recipe intentionally, right? But David Smith looked very closely and said, I think I figured it out, what this says. And he Googled it and he said, oh, this matches a New York Times recipe for shortbread. He says in the blog, looking closely at the fractional letters visible, I'm pretty confident this first line reads 1.5 cups, 340 grams, yeah, cold unsalted butter cut into 1/2 inch pieces plus more for greasing pan. Then he writes, this is definitely a recipe for shortbread. I mean, what else would need that much butter? It's really a lot of butter. Now you know.
An entire blog post, so you don't have to click through. Come on.
I love it. And you know, if you want to die fast, you can make the New York Times shortbread recipe, and go crazy over it. This is actually, it's different because this is bittersweet brownie shortbread, but it does start with 1.5 cups. 340 grams cold and salted butter. That's 3 sticks.
Would it be ironic if an American is making New York Times shortbread for the Brits?
Well, that's the point of Ted Lasso.
That is exactly the point of
it. It is, isn't it? He won them over with his shortbread.
In fact, that makes it an even better Easter egg when you think about it.
Yeah. I'm trying to find that.
What a fun show.
Court decision allowing, what was this? It allowed Apple an Apple class action to go ahead. Oh, it's the iTunes buy button. I thought this was really interesting. So there is a buy button on iTunes, but a federal judge says it isn't really a buy button because, as we all know, access to that content can be revoked. You're not buying it. The Sacramento judge, U.S. District Court Judge John Mendez, said Apple contends that no reasonable consumer would believe that purchased content would remain on the iTunes platform indefinitely, but in common usage, the term buy means to acquire possession over something. And he said at least...
I think they did this wrong. They should have handled it differently. They should have said, like, when we first enabled this button, you actually bought it and downloaded it. Then we added streaming services on top of that. You can still buy and download it immediately and keep it forever as originally intended.
Can you?
But now we offer the extra value.
Can you download
it? Sure.
it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, for sure. And but we offer the extra added streaming service on top of it for when you haven't got it downloaded or you're not at your home computer, and like bifurcated that entire thing.
And if I download it, there is DRM in it. If I download it, it could come a time I couldn't play it though, right?
Well, Microsoft, Google shuts down the whole service sort of world. Yeah. But yeah, not until the iTunes servers go down, and that's not been an issue. That's a theoretical issue.
Yeah. And that's Apple's defense was this is speculative. The injury is not they said the injury is that the speculation that someday the content could disappear. But in fact, the judge said no. The injury is at the time of purchase, he paid either too much for the product or spent money he would not have, but for the misrepresentation that he was buying it. Now,
Apple's defense was so Orwellian to say, who in their right mind would think that buy meant you had it forever?
And that you own it. Buy is not buy.
Yeah, it was a gaslight defense. And they didn't even need it. That's the part. It's the same thing when I feel bad. Like I feel angry at Epic for doing dumb things in court. I always feel angry when and I'm not even a lawyer. Okay, maybe I'm doing bad advice. But it just seems like there's a way smarter way to respond to that.
Yeah. Yeah, if they just said, well, Your Honor, he can download it and he can play it forever. Except it's still not strictly true because in order to play it, you have to launch a player that then checks the DRM and make sure you have a valid ownership. If that server goes down or disappears or at some point Apple says, you know, we never should have sold Gone with the Wind. It's racist. They could make it so you can never play it, right? Without removing the DRM.
I think that's every download service uses the buy button that way, though. Like, I'm hard pressed to think of a single service where you can actually download something that doesn't have a buy button. So that would probably be a universal issue beyond Apple.
I guess you could ask the question.
That would make everything beyond Apple.
Did I buy my house if the bank has a lien on it, or did I buy my car if I've got a loan?
Every audiobook, every piece of software that we download now off the internet.
Although Apple iTunes Music doesn't have DRM on it, correct?
Not anymore.
You get those
That's
AAC
right.
files.
You do own those.
You do own those, right?
If you download them. If you don't, and you're just streaming them, and they go away, you're still bad.
Completely theoretical. Can I hand them down to my kids, or do I just have a license to play them during my lifetime?
That's still in court, isn't it? Isn't that still in court? There have been a whole bunch of digital inheritance cases.
Yeah.
The studios don't want you to. The studios want your kids to pay again.
Yeah. It's the first sale doctrine. Well,
remember when they were like, you could buy a CD and play that in your house, in your car, and then early on the studios were like, no, you need a separate license for your car and a separate license for your house.
Do I have the right to sell, display, or otherwise to dispose of a copy of a product that I bought? And that's the fundamental question. It's interesting. If you download our podcast, you own them. I promise never to take them back. They're yours for life.
But what Leo's kids do with them one day.
And you can give them to your kids. Not that you'd ever want to, but you could. You can hand them down. Let's talk about well, I guess we did. Philip, did you feel sufficiently heard on the Klobuchar, Blumenthal, Apple, Google hearings?
I guess I did. The one thing that surprises me, because I'm getting into the fight with my readership, the same fight I got into back at Time. I was editing the tech section, and I had a writer who didn't believe in antitrust, and he always argued, how is Microsoft harming the consumer? It was always antitrust from the point of view of the consumer, which there's some Supreme Court precedent from it. But antitrust is really about the relationship of the company with its competitors. And so he would write one thing, I would edit it out, and then he'd get it back, and he would put his stuff back in, and I would take it out, but I had the final say. So that's the way it went.
Wow, that's an aggressive editor. You must represent my point of view.
Well, no, it had to be logical, and anyway, it turned out I was right and he was wrong.
All right. One of the things about the hearings that just always drives me crazy. First of all, although it's better than it used to be, the senators and representatives clearly are incredibly ignorant about technology, and as Renee said, that's terrifying when they go to start drafting legislation. But the other issue was that what's interesting is that Democrats and Republicans have two different motivations for wanting to do the same thing. You had the GOP co-chair complaining about Apple removing Parler, and that was his kind of beef, and the whole conservative thing about their censoring conservatives is extremely political and partisan, and this comes up every time in every one of these, and it's just nonsense. It's complete nonsense, and I don't think it shouldn't have had any part in there. And I hope if they do something with Apple in the App Store that it doesn't have this kind of partisan taint to it that the GOP keeps trying to introduce.
I thought David Cicilline was pretty well briefed for the House hearings, and Klobuchar was dumb about a couple things, but Ben Thompson, he thought this was the most fun, best informed hearing he'd ever seen.
Yeah, he said it was very amusing. The best, most entertaining tech-related congressional hearings I've ever seen, and unfortunately, I don't think it was streamed live like these other ones. You have to watch a recording. There's a YouTube.
It was live.
Oh, it was live.
Okay. Yeah, on the subcommittee's website.
Oh, okay. So it's nice to see members of Congress well informed. Unfortunately, politics very much intrudes into this process always. But I guess that's politics. I mean, that's how it's set up. That's how we do these things in this country. Let's talk about this ransomware, because I thought you had an interesting theory on this. So the operators of the, I don't know how you pronounce it, REVIL, I'm going to say REvil ransomware gang, apparently cracked Quanta Computers, which makes laptops for Apple, among many other companies, and got schematics for upcoming Apple products. The REvil gang, or REvil gang, said Quanta refused to pay the ransom to get its stolen data back, so they pushed 21 screenshots depicting MacBook schematics and said, you were going to publish a new dump every day until Apple or Quanta pays the $50 million ransom. Now, you said it stopped, so maybe we don't know, something happened. It seems like Apple would not pay the money, but who knows? They really do like keeping this stuff private.
It seemed too late. I mean, once the machine has been unveiled, I'm not sure how much help this.
Well, this is something that's not going to be unveiled, I think, until June at the earliest, WWDC. In particular, at 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros, which sound like the MacBook Pros we've been hearing about. And there is, should I not repeat it because it's stolen information? What's the ethics on that?
We got burned during the impeachment hearing with some of that stuff. Probably good not to repeat it.
All right, because it is extortion. So I won't repeat it. But you can look it up if you want to find it, because I'm apparently the only person in the world who won't repeat it. So there you go. And
I'm scared, though. I would be, if someone got a hold of my hard drive and encrypted it and said they wouldn't release it, unless I paid up, I would be hurt. I'm not protected against that.
Yeah, no, that's terrible. No, of course not. Yeah. No, these guys are evil. I mean, it's in their name. The commercial would say we're evil. It's in our name.
Truth in advertising.
They're just bad. They're just bad people, and in a way, I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to facilitate. It would be nice if all the publications would just say, "Yeah, go ahead, dump that stuff. We're not going to repeat it." I don't know.
Take the Jeff Bezos approach.
Right.
Sure.
Right. Go ahead, publish that picture. I don't care. Facebook is going to launch its digital currency this year. Remember, they were doing Libra, and there was so much negative publicity, they changed the name. That's very Facebook, right? Oh, well, we'll change the name. It's now called DM, as in Carpe Diem. And it's a stable coin pegged to the U.S. dollar. This would be used, I guess, on Facebook for payments. I don't know exactly. It will
take all the oxygen out of everything that can possibly take the oxygen out of.
Given it's Facebook. Yeah. See, I have a hard time with Facebook stories because I long ago left Facebook in the dust, and I just don't understand why anybody continues to use it. But apparently 2 billion people think I'm wrong, and I guess that's enough to make it worth covering.
It's a problem in local politics, I've got to say. All the divisions within a 17,000 person town get exposed and then accelerated.
That's now, Phil. We should mention Philip is. What are you, an alderman? What is your title?
I'm a city councilor.
City
in Greenfield,
councilor,
Massachusetts. Yeah.
And so you see this up close. Do you mean Facebook's impacting the politics?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It because positions get hardened on both sides. And we had a huge fight over funding the library, and a huge fight over the fire station, and now a huge fight over the fixing up the repairs on the police station in a defund police atmosphere. It's tough.
But
It's tough.
maybe I could make the case that the only reason you didn't have those fights before is because people didn't know the thing was going on, and all Facebook has done is spread the information more widely.
Well, we have a pretty good example of where it does go wrong in the presidential election, and
yes.
in the we don't have to get into it here, but we've seen positions get hardened and exaggerated before, and what I'm saying is it happens not just in the national scale but also in local government.
Yeah. An internal Facebook task force reported that, in fact, Facebook knew it was being used to incite the Capitol insurrection and failed to take appropriate action. This is a task force inside Facebook. BuzzFeed News got the private report, which concludes, we hope the company does better next time. Okay.
Isn't that what's so interesting is that there is if you look at the different companies, for example, Susan, I'm going to pronounce her last name wrong, Susan Wojcicki, I think, who runs YouTube, has said several times that she will take a loss in revenue if it means creating just a better humanity. So there's certain content
I wish that were true.
Well, no, but I mean, like, when you just listen to the rhetoric, and yet time after time we have testimony from Facebook executives who said that they've offered Mark the opportunity to have like 5% less revenue or 10%, and it would get rid of like the most malignant parts of Facebook. And every time he's maximized revenue and maximized engagement and attention at the expense of every human consideration. And I think when you look like at the spectrum of companies with like maybe Facebook at one end, Google somewhere close to that, and the other networks, Twitter following along, it just seems like he's made the worst possible, least human choice every single time.
And yet he's made the choice that from a purely business point of view is the right choice, right? Well, maybe not in the long run.
Nicotine and cigarettes, like from a business point of view, is the best choice.
I mean, he's making the most money.
It's like social tobacco at this point.
Yeah, it is. But Facebook is becoming like big tobacco. They know they've got these internal reports. They know they're not doing the right thing, and they can't turn their back on the profits, I guess.
Don Boehner, in his books, at one point he was a consultant or on the board of a cigarette company, and he said none of the top executives smoked. And once he went, because he's a chain smoker all his life, once he went out to smoke a cigarette outside, and the chairman of the company said, "John, that stuff's bad for you. Don't do that."
Okay, now I'm going to read the book. That's a revelation. Holy cow!
Well, I thought it was interesting that you had within 2 weeks, you had Facebook announcing that it was going to go all in on audio. Which has the potential, of course, to conflict and compete and possibly crush, if Mark Zuckerberg wants to, Clubhouse and other operations like that. And then at the same time, you had Apple doing its AirTags, which could dominate the market and crush Tile. And at the same time, you have Congress intensely looking at these companies, and they don't give a damn. They're going to go ahead and do what they want to do in the way they want to do it, even though people are looking over their shoulder and regulation looms. And that this week was just kind of astounding to me in terms of kind of big tech's, we don't give a damn.
Do you think we're going to look back, all of us, in a few years and say, this was the last moment we had to stop these giant tech companies from basically running the planet, and we failed, and that, it's over?
Is there a difference, though? Because it feels like Clubhouse is such a feature. Like, everybody is making Clubhouse. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter,
We
Discord,
have a Clubhouse. Look at the Discord.
Slack.
Look at what we're doing.
And
right here. This is a complete duplicate of Clubhouse. Here we are up on the stage. Here's the people on the stage. They even have a hand raise button. They have, instead of leave quietly, it says exit quietly.
Right? It's a feature like stories.
Yeah, you can't.
Everyone is Snapchat. Everyone is Clubhouse.
Clubhouse is.
But in looking at
my mail app is going to have Clubhouse soon.
Yeah.
So, but in looking at what Facebook has done historically, this continues to follow that pattern. It doesn't matter that Twit is using Discord to duplicate Clubhouse. What matters is that Facebook is doing it, and the pattern that it has established with its behavior.
Yeah. this is that same antitrust thing. When you get to a certain size, for a significant portion of the world's population, Facebook is the internet. There is nothing outside of Facebook. It is the internet.
Right, which is the way it was with AOL before.
Right.
You know, in the earliest days of that.
I have to say, I have a little bit of hope because I look at upstarts like TikTok and how they're just, you know, for a younger generation, completely supplanting whatever it was they got. Or I look at, honestly, I look at Discord, and it is a new social network. It's not fashioned like Facebook, but it is a new social network. I think messaging apps to some degree are replacing Facebook. Things like Telegram,
or like WeChat,
for group messaging, for groups, for social sharing. What would stop a family, an extended family, from creating a Discord server and saying, "This is our Facebook. Let's keep up on how we're doing, and we don't have to worry about any of this other stuff." So I think that there is an opportunity for Facebook to be replaced, but right now they look like a juggernaut. I mean, they just look completely unstoppable because of this. But remember, as you said, AOL was the internet for a vast majority of Americans.
CompuServe.
Yeah, and it's gone.
Think about if you could put a stake through Facebook's heart, how many flowers would bloom? I mean,
wow, that's almost Maoist in its lyricism. Okay, put a stake in Facebook's heart, and how many flowers would bloom?
There's your title for the show.
Yeah, do you mean split it up? Do you mean by splitting it up? Is that what you mean, or just kill it?
Yeah, I don't know how you split up Facebook. You know, the chat room is talking about how do you split up Apple? Well, it's different for different companies. You can see how to split up Amazon because the web service is such a different company.
Yeah,
right.
And Alphabet did
Apple,
Google for them.
Right. Alphabet did it already, and they just they created a template.
With Apple, it seems like the problems with the App Store come up when it has a product in its own platform, and then if it starts playing heavy-handed games,
so Apple commercial
that starts to look illegal.
I should point out that Discord was being courted by Microsoft. Microsoft went as high as $12 billion, and Discord said no. Those talks are now off.
Didn't Clubhouse say no to $8 billion from Twitter or someone as well?
Amazing. Isn't that
Maybe
amazing?
should have taken that.
I remember when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion, and we thought that's insane. $1 billion? It's just an app.
And what was it? Message?
WhatsApp.
The Messenger they bought for
WhatsApp was
17 billion?
Well, I think when the stock price started to play out, it ended up being closer to $29 billion. It was a lot of money. And no one would say at this point that Instagram wasn't a deal, and that WhatsApp was probably a appropriate price.
Kevin Systrom kicking himself.
Oh, poor Kevin. So you can see why the CEO of Discord is saying, "Yeah, we're not going to $12 billion." Yeah,
but Clubhouse maybe should have taken it at this point.
You know what's better than 4 commas? Let's take a little break. We've got lots more to talk about. Philip-Elmer DeWitt is here. PED30.com, PED30.com. It's going well for you, Philip? When you went, it must have been scary to go independent.
I didn't have much of a choice.
They made you go independent.
Well, they said they could hire 5 young guys for what they were paying me, and I didn't have to hear that twice.
That's appalling. Man. That's appalling.
I was out the next month. No, it's doing great. We've added this new. I doubled my price in January and grew my membership by
Isn't
marketing.
that interesting? So you charged more, but you got more subscribers.
Well, I said you've got 5 more days to get it at the old price. 4 more days, 3 more days.
Oh, that's smart.
And that kind of shook the tree and got a lot of the kind of free riders to finally sign up.
Nice.
Because they felt bad they were getting it for free. And then to make it valuable, I've started running these monthly Zooms with analysts. It's sort of an Ask Me Anything with this analyst or that reporter. I'm having Eric Savage from the is that his name? Yeah, Eric Savage from Barron's, who's been writing about technology for investors almost as long as I have.
I think this is the future. Ben Thompson writes about the sovereign writer, the idea that if you've got an audience and you've got a brand and you've got something to say, there's no reason for you to do it under the umbrella of a big organization. Now that Substack and other things like this, Memberful, which is what we use, exist. Ben uses Memberful as well. Create your own little, maybe it's a lifestyle business. It's not going to be a unicorn, but create your own lifestyle business and be independent. And that's why I don't worry too much about the monoliths like Facebook, because I think in the long run, you don't have to put a stake in its heart for 1,000 flowers to bloom. They're blooming right now. They're starting to bloom. We want to do the same thing. We did a Linux show on yesterday, something we could never get a sponsor to pay for. But Jonathan Bennett from our Floss Weekly said, what if we just got a stage together and kind of like Clubhouse and talked about Linux for an hour? And we did, and it was great. I think that's...
But it wasn't monetized, that particular...
Well, it is monetized because you have to pay to be in the club. Oh. So, yes, it is monetized. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be enough money to say, let's keep doing this. It really does depend on... We did this when we started in 2005, and it went very, very well. We got $9,000 a month at its peak, but not enough.
Again, from that company, they'd licensed it from that company that Apple was suing that I'm blanking on the name.
Oh, that's right. The emulator company.
Yeah.
That's right.
They're not going to use it for anyone evil. And then Apple's like, well, what about that? Apple got curious and said, well, then who are you selling it to? And are they using it for anything evil? And they're like, we don't know. And then they're like, but we only sell it to democratic governments. And like, but that's not synonymous with not being evil.
Right. Oh, gosh, we know that.
Yeah, because Apple doesn't want the exploit to go to anybody but Apple, because ultimately it's not so much who's using the exploit, but that other people have maybe found that exploit that have no intention of telling anybody about it. And the only way you can close them is from people who will disclose them.
So Azimuth is the Australian company they used. Yes. But you're saying they got one of the exploits in the chain they got from a company that Apple had sued and lost because they made emulators for the iPhone. Right? And you're right.
But also, it turns out licenses out this stuff.
Yeah, to maybe
ultimately it was brute force that did it, but they needed several exploits to get that close.
Yeah, the reason the FBI couldn't unlock it is because it had that security turned on where if you entered the code more than 10 times, it would erase the phone.
Right. So Apple never did know until this lawsuit that this was how it happened.
Right.
They weren't even in on.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, you learn things in lawsuits you didn't know. For instance, that's how we learned that Apple will never make iMessages for Android. That was due to the Apple Epic lawsuit and discovery in that. That's the risk of these lawsuits, is sometimes discovery reveals
Although a lot of the stuff they're discovering on seems like it's so old. It's like a decade-old emails that, like a lot of stuff is like with Steve Jobs emails. Like that doesn't apply anymore.
Yeah. Maybe Steve had the idea to do that.
Well, everybody always assumed that it was that green color that, drives iPhone users crazy when they're communicating with an Android device. And sure enough, in those emails, it was the user interface that was part of the lock-in, and they conceded that. And the thing that everybody knew all along was confirmed by this discovery.
Yeah. So it wasn't Cellebrite.
As a user, I want to know the difference between blue and green, because blue is secured. It's end-to-end encrypted, and green isn't because it's just using SMS. But like a workaround is to let everybody subscribe for $2 to get a gold bubble and the ability to redact messages. I mean, just make it worth our while.
I want a gold bubble.
Well, what's interesting is on the Mac, at least, I'm not sure how it is on the iPhone, but that green color is the color of the Messages app icon. It's not, it's not blue, it's green. So that's kind of like the native color for the app.
And what is blue, the native color for Facebook?
So are they web apps, Safari, and things like that? Green is communications. And blue is web.
So Messages is indeed green on the iPhone.
Right.
So
yeah, the green and blue apps.
For the first time ever, new regulations proposed in the EU against artificial intelligence. And we had a big debate over this on This Week in Google. Jeff Jarvis predictably thought, we don't want the EU to regulate anything. Stacey and I argued in favor of this. It seemed sensitive. It's a bill that's been proposed that would create a list of so-called high-risk uses of AI. They acknowledge that there are plenty of uses of AI, for instance, a video game, simulated player, no big deal, that are not dangerous. But things like face recognition have huge potential consequences if they're not done properly. So they've named some high-risk uses of AI that would be subject to new supervision, standards for development and use, things like critical infrastructure. You know, a good example, we had one of the things we voted on in California was to get rid of money bail, because that's a clearly inequitable system. But it failed because, as the opponents pointed out, instead of requiring people pay money, there was an artificial intelligence algorithm that would determine if a defendant was a risk or not, and no one knew how this algorithm was made, and it could very well have been completely biased, and so people said maybe money bail is not the best solution, but this algorithm is not a good replacement. As with many EU regulations, the top fine is massive, 6% of annual worldwide revenue, although it's rare that at least so far, that's GDPR is similar, and no EU fines have been levied at that rate. I think this is a good idea. You guys have thoughts upon this? AI is moving apace. There's no question about that. It's being used in more and more ways. Some of them, I think, potentially problematic. Face recognition.
This reminds me of the early days of gene splicing, where they had a meeting. I think it was at Cellebrite. I may be pronouncing that wrong.
Cellebrite, yeah, and that's in
and all the scientists involved got together, and they set down some ground rules. It was kind of like the robot rules. You could genetically engineer skin cells that don't reproduce. What you couldn't do was engineer germ cells. You couldn't engineer the sperm or the egg, because any change you made there would be carried on to a whole new generation. And for several decades, that held until a Chinese scientist engineered some kids who supposedly couldn't get AIDS.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Yep.
So it does seem like people are starting to recognize the power of AI, and that there are certain things it shouldn't be doing. That's we've evolved to an interesting state with this science.
Yeah, the idea of this, and I think it's good. The EU could send teams, for instance, of regulators to companies to look at the algorithms. The companies are required to reveal how, a lot of these black box algorithms. The money bail is a perfect example. It's a black box algorithm. How did you derive this? What are the parameters? We're going to do this in such a way that it doesn't reveal it to competitors, but it seems completely reasonable that regulators should at least be able to check and make sure that they're not biased.
But if it's machine learning, nobody knows how.
That is a problem. Absolutely. And then they would, and in that case, I think they would want to look at the training material to make sure that at least that material was not, that's one of the problems with face recognition.
We're lucky they didn't fire all the ethical AI people then, aren't we?
Oh, wait a minute. We did.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops. Talk about Google, of course. Deep fakes, or software that puts a person's face on top of another's body in video, will require labels that this is a deep fake. I don't know if you've used Reface. We played with it a little bit on MacBreak with you. You were there, right, Renee, for that? Or was it on Twit?
I think so.
Yeah. That's a Ukrainian company called Neocortex, which makes that and allows you to put your face into well-known movie clips. I was Rocky, for instance, running up the steps of the Forum and all that. They said they're working on labeling, and we'll try to follow the EU guidelines. So of course there are pitfalls anytime governments get involved in regulation, but better to take the bull by the horns and attempt something than to just say, yeah, it's fine. Go ahead. You agree, I take it. No dissent.
Agreed.
We were talking before the show about, what is it? Hiding the pickle?
Hiding the pickle.
What's hiding the pickle?
Hiding the pickle is the context for it is we had a consultant come into the Chronicle at one point, sent in from Hearst, who wanted us to write our headlines so that we were hiding the pickle, so that we weren't giving everything away. And of course, what became more what was more of an impact on the staff was this term hiding the pickle, which became the subject of many jokes over the years. And I'm not sure anybody ever adhered to his suggestions at the time, but that hiding the pickle is basically, you know, not giving it all away at the top.
So it's my contention this is a good example of hiding the pickle in the Washington Post today. Tell me if this is not a salacious headline. Minutes before Trump left office, great start. Has nothing to do with that, but great start. Millions of the Pentagon's dormant IP addresses sprang to life. Where's the pickle? I don't know. It's way down low in the story.
What's hilarious to me is that this is the opposite of modern YouTube best practices, where you have to reward the click immediately, or someone will just go to another video.
Oh,
like if
that's
you
a good
say,
point.
$1 million, last one to leave the island wins the island. You have to show someone being kicked off that island the second you click on it. Nobody has any patience anymore for anything.
Link bait ain't what it used to be. It's true. If I see the 10 ways you're letting your wife down, I will not click on that. Even though I'm desperate to know the answer, I will not click on it because I can tell it's a listicle and it's link bait. And the pickle is buried, and I don't. Anyway, it turns out the article goes on about a company, a mysterious company named Global Resource Systems, claimed 56 million IP addresses owned by the Pentagon, then 375 million, 6% of the entire IPv4 landscape, and then, as listed in records, I mean, this article is like a mystery story. The company's address in Plantation, Florida, outside of Fort Lauderdale, is a shared workspace in an office building that doesn't show Global Resource Systems on its lobby directory. And a receptionist, when they called her on Friday, said she could provide no information about the company and asked, oh, they didn't call her, they visited, asked the reporter to leave. It turns out, oh, it was the Pentagon.
I'm not sure, Leo. I'm not sure that's a great example of burying the pickle, because that was just misleading. The headline had all kinds of mystery in it that the story didn't deliver.
No,
as an editor,
you have to over-deliver.
Right. As an editor, the Time had certain formulae that
Time was
every
famous
story
for
followed.
this. Yeah.
And one of them was to start the first paragraph, or the first few paragraphs, would set the scene. You know, it was a dark and windy night.
Yes.
And writers, especially the younger ones, had a tendency to let that grow to several paragraphs. And I had a rule that you had to get to the nut of the story by the second paragraph.
I think that's good.
The reader.
Time was famous, you know. It was,
backward ran the sentences till reeled the mind.
Yeah, and they would kind of put quotes into, you know, they would do this first person description of, you know, George Shultz walking into the state, like as if they were there, and it was all made up, right? That was just the style.
That wasn't necessarily made up, but there was a story of a reporter who ran down the hall, past all the other reporters, opened the door of the hearing room, closed the door, and ran out because some editor in New York wanted to know what color the walls were.
And the inverted sentences were very famous.
It's funny. I've gotten so used to editing for retention now, where you have to earn every second of consideration you get from every viewer, that if I watch a YouTube video and it says something and they spend 2 minutes blathering about something else before they get to it, I just not today, Satan, not tab so fast and go on to another video. I can't take the padding anymore either.
Yeah.
It's not about your watch time. It's about my attention.
Does it go back to Loose, the early days of Time magazine, this whole style, Henry Loose?
Oh, yeah. It was, I mean, in the early days, it was a cut and paste job when there were 7 New York newspapers, and what they were delivering, the value they were giving was the important stuff out of 7 newspapers. And it was all about compression and cleverness. So he did things like eliminated the series column, this, and that. Some people put a comma before the end.
Yeah.
He got rid of that to save one space in a line so he could squeeze more words in.
Well, that's understandable. I'm looking at a Wikipedia article about this inverted sentence thing, and apparently it had been going on for a long time because the New Yorker parodied it in 1936 with this Walcott Gibbs quote: "Backward ran sentences until reeled the mind. Where it will all end, knows God."
Knows God, yeah.
Well, the Washington Post has gotten really good at what are called web-style sentences, and headlines, and that's
This is a classic,
and that is.
It had
classic.
nothing to do with Trump leaving office.
Right. So in the content management system for the Houston Chronicle and all the Hearst papers, we had multiple fields for different headlines depending on where the story would appear. So we had hide the pickle headlines and what was called the web headline on the that appeared on the website to the way you clicked into. You had an SEO style headline on the story itself so that Google was friendly to it and you got search. And then you could do a social media headline when you thought it might do better in a different way on social media. And so depending on where the story appeared, it had a different headline each time, which was kind of genius, but drove a lot of the people who had to fill in those forms a little nuts.
So to dig the pickle up in this Washington Post story, they finally got a spokesperson for the Defense Department who said, no, we haven't sold those IP addresses to anybody. We still own them all. What we were doing was to see if they were mostly dormant, to see if there was any nefarious activities taking place. Apparently, it's a common practice for hackers to use these dormant IP addresses as an IP address in their spam or hacking. And so the Pentagon adjusted their BGP routes to basically download traffic on these IP addresses to figure out if bad things were happening and perhaps to chase them down. A person, this is the last paragraph in the story, a person familiar with the pilot effort who agreed to speak on the condition of anonymity because the program isn't public said, it's important for the Defense Department to have visibility and transparency into its various cyber resources, including IP addresses, and manage the addresses properly so they will be available if and when the Pentagon wants to use them. They still own the addresses. Nothing happened. It had nothing to do with inauguration. It was
important. Transparency is important to us," said the source who would only speak
anonymous source. Yeah, but it's a good point. The Pentagon, it just was in other words, it was a normal security procedure. That
exactly what happened. That headline is the result of the budget line that the reporter wrote before he started reporting that didn't pan out. That's how he pitched the story. Hey, all these IP addresses.
Oh, then she went and look, I went there and they threw me out. Oh my God, oh my God. Yeah, because the subhead is, after decades of not using a huge chunk of the internet, the Pentagon has given control of millions of computer addresses to a previously unknown company. In an effort to identify possible cyber vulnerabilities and threats, and no, they didn't give them to an unknown company. They still maintain complete
There's
control.
this incredibly frustrating thing where, I hate the term fake news so much because news really is the last line of protection between everything and people. It's supposed to help clarify, inform, empower, all these things. But then you have bad news where it's in bad faith, where they take something innocuous and make it sensational just to steal steal attention, or to otherwise take something that's mundane and make it seem outlandish, and it just destroys the credibility of everything. And big media is so guilty of that. I really wish that they would focus more on the information and empowerment and less on the attention aspect.
I'm going to give some credit to Kashmir Hill of the New York Times and her colleague Aaron Krolik, because they did some really good work in the Sunday Times, uncovering an industry whose primary purpose is to slander people and then blackmail them.
Oh, yeah.
This was amazing. Highly recommend.
So well done.
The Slander Industry is the name of it. Adam Krolik created a fake post that said, Adam Krolik, New York, is an unqualified loser. This post, he posted in one spot, but immediately got duplicated to many, many sites like Cheaterboard and USA Cheaters Online and badgirlreports.date and on and on and on. But notice next to every one of these posts is an ad to remove the negative complaint against you. And the companies that are doing these ads are apparently also doing the slander sites and making a lot of money. Now, poor Krolik, because soon that image appeared in his Google image search results, worsthomewrecker.com, cheaterboard.com. But you know what? Credit to Kashmir Hill and Adam Krolik, because they did a great job tracking this all down, figuring it out. Krolik said, this is going to, for the rest of my life, the top search results for me will be from cheaterboard.com and sddcarriers.com and on and on and on. But they interviewed people, they tracked it down, and they basically found out that this is a cottage industry. These sites are created by the so-called reputation defender sites, and then you give them money. Sometimes they give money to the site owner. Sometimes they just keep it. They take it down. But they also warn you, if you don't, we need more money because this is just going to spread. Of course it's going to spread. They're spreading it. So just a word of warning before you go out and pay literally tens of thousands of dollars to get this stuff taken down, to consider the source. And they finally tracked a lot of this down to a lot of the people involved in this had criminal records of their own.
Yep.
Fascinating. Really, really well done article. And Cash Hill does such good work.
There's this old joke in Chinese culture where someone was a martial arts teacher at night and then an osteopath during the day, because it meant that every customer would get hurt in the evening and then have to go for treatment in the morning.
He did on his guard at the evening sessions.
That's why so many Sifu were doctors as well. But the thing that kills me is that this is that kind of, like, they create the fake story and then charge you for taking the fake story down. It's that sort of revolving door.
Isn't that so? It's an old
evil version.
It's an old terrestrial, old pre-digital version of. It's a digital.
Well, if you can own both ends of that chain,
sure,
you're just minting money.
You're minting money. Poor Adam Krolik. 3 months after he started the experiment, his search results were showing the consequences. He says, Bing helpfully recommended adding loser to a search for my name. When you Googled my name, cheaters.news was at the top of the image results. And I think it's going to haunt him for the rest of his life, unfortunately. So he's really sacrificed
he needs to get that story moved up to the top of his search.
Yeah, maybe now that the story's out. Oh man! All right, let's take a little break, our final break before we wrap things up. Our show today brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring for spring? Bless you, bless you. I mean, the world is coming back. What are you hiring for? Maybe you need to hire someone that wears many hats. That's hard to do. The thing is, no matter what that job opening is, there is somebody out there looking for work who would be perfect for it. The challenge for anybody doing hiring is, how do you find that needle in a haystack? Well, ZipRecruiter is the best way to do this. ZipRecruiter, first of all, as soon as you post on ZipRecruiter, that post goes to more than 100 other job boards, which is great, and social networks like Facebook and Twitter. So you're going to cast the widest net possible in every industry, in every state. You don't have to decide, well, where is the job board best for this? It just goes to all of them. Plus, ZipRecruiter does something pretty amazing. People come to ZipRecruiter also looking for work, so they have hundreds of thousands of current resumes on file. When you are looking for somebody, they'll go through those resumes, and if they find somebody who's good for that job, they will invite them to apply. That means 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. We use ZipRecruiter all the time, and I would say it's within hours in our case. It's always amazing, because it's hard. When you're down a person, means everybody's going to have to work harder. The boss is going to have to work harder. And hiring can be such a tedious process. You get all those phone calls. You get all the mail in your inbox. I mean, nobody wants to go through that. I watched Lisa. Her face, falls when anybody gives us 2 weeks' notice. that happened to our bookkeeper, and she knew she was going to have to do all the bookkeeping. She went online, said ZipRecruiter. It was breakfast. Put the announcement that we were hiring up. Within, I think before lunch, we had three. These candidates would start. She go, "Oh, this is a good one." She was like surprised. "Oh, this is a great one." The good thing is they don't come to your email. They don't come to your phone. They go into the ZipRecruiter interface. They reformat the resume so they're easy to read. You can have screening questions, true, false, multiple choice, essay, whatever. So you can eliminate people who just don't match your needs. They allow you to rank them quickly and hire the right person fast. And so we would get applicants within hours. I mean, just so fast. It's really amazing. Right now, you could try ZipRecruiter for free. I would strongly recommend it. Only our listeners get it if you go to ZipRecruiter.com/twit. ZipRecruiter.com/twit. Try ZipRecruiter free. ZipRecruiter.com/twit. Whether you need to hire a civil engineer in New York, an attorney in Colorado, or even hire a mascot in Missouri. Yes, you can use ZipRecruiter to get a mascot for your team. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/TWIT. I love you, ZipRecruiter. We thank you so much for the job you've done for us in the past, and thank you for supporting This Week in Tech. And thank you, dear listener, for using that URL, because then they know you saw it here. We got more to talk about in just a little bit, but this would be a good time, I think, to take a look at a little movie. Because it's been a really interesting week on Twit. Everything that happened. Do you have a beer question for Mary Jo? Anybody?
Well, I guess it's not quite a beer question, although I've had Microsoft beer at a convention. I'm not sure if I can speak to that.
Was it derivative of the Apple bear, would you say?
Previously on Twit.
Good line.
Twit News.
This was a truly loaded event, a lot more than we expected.
We did get the color iMacs. We finally got the AirTags. They finally shipped. No surprises there. We've known about these AirTags for a year.
Hands-on photography.
The guest that I have on air for you all this week is not only the legendary Mr. Rick Salmon.
I have what I call, I think you've heard me talk about it, my one picture promise. You could only take one picture. What would that one picture be? You'll get a higher percentage of good pictures.
This Week in Google.
This morning, the EU issued its proposal for legislation around AI and AI apps. No, Jeff, this is actually really good legislation.
As it stands, Stacey, you're right. This is not bad, but I can see danger in every bullet in the list here.
Mac Break Weekly.
I think the big thing, though, is that I think what we're going to see is with COVID is that, the use of a lot of these things were like this, and then it went up like this, but it's not going to come back down to here.
Stop showing off.
Come like this.
Twit.
If you're listening at home, what you missed was a little flex from Alex where he telestrated.
I was showing you. That is the best way to, how am I going to describe that?
He's amazing. He never ceases to amaze, Alex Lindsay. All right, let's see here. What do we got? Bitcoin down to 50,000. $200 billion wiped off the cryptocurrency market. I'm sorry. Hard for me to take that seriously. If you're trying to make money on Bitcoin, well, that's life.
Neil Seibart had a really interesting thread on Bitcoin this week.
Oh, yeah? What did he say?
He was basically just saying that, on one hand you have all this hype, and on the other hand you have zero people able to explain what it is beyond hype. I think he was responding to Jack's tweet where he says you have all these people who act as huge spokespeople, Elon, Jack, all of that, but none of them can ever give you the actual positives or explain away the energy questions other than, time solves for technology.
Right. Here's a headline I like. No pickle burying here from Fortune. Bitcoin has no uses. That could be its downfall. You could buy pizza with it. You could buy a Tesla with it.
The energy problem.
That's a huge problem.
Just seems like we're starting to see the end of this. I mean, if it's going to heat the planet to generate the next Bitcoin, that can only go on so long.
See, if you tell that to one of the Bitcoin bros, they say, "Oh no, don't worry, we've got a plan for that. We're going to move from proof of work to proof of stake. It's much better." The other thing that's tumbling is NFTs. Remember everybody was talking about NFTs and the Beeples.
Yeah, it turns out it's not even someone was saying NFTs are basically buying an autograph because all you're getting is the JSON that leads to a URL that may or may not have a valid entity at the end of it anymore.
Yeah. You know, what can I say?
But people make a lot of money in the Delta, Leo. Like when they hype something
right.
and then
Act
reality
quick.
sets in, people make fortunes.
Yeah. Act quick. Take advantage of it. Now some good news. NASA's helicopter Ingenuity.
Oh, God.
Third flight
Love
now.
that.
Really great story. Look at it go. There, you can see the distance in the picture. That's what my drone looked like the first time I flew it, and it disappeared way off in the distance. They did not lose Ingenuity, thank goodness. It conducted its most recent flight at speeds and distances beyond that ever demonstrated, even in its testing. It is a massive success.
I love this so much. My career as a science researcher started with the launch of the first shuttle. And I remember reading the NASA specs on this thing, and I thought, oh my God, it's going to crash. These tiles are going to fall off. And it took a while for that to happen. But manned spaceflight is so dangerous, and to see a little helicopter on the surface of Mars, I just love it. It's wonderful.
Although NASA is not eschewing manned flight by any means, nor is Elon Musk, nor anybody else involved in this. In fact, there was another experiment that was on Perseverance that did very, very well, called MOXIE, which is, by the way, a retronym. It's reverse engineered. Michael Heck, the principal investigator, said he loved Moxie soda as a kid, which is hard to believe. It's the worst thing I've ever tasted. Do they? I think they still. You're in Maine. It was official drink of Maine, right? Or no, you're in Western Massachusetts, but you're near Maine.
I don't know. I haven't seen Moxie for a long time.
So I thought it was gone, right? It's flavored with gentian root. It tastes like medicine. Apparently, it's not gone. Coca-Cola bought it in 2018. There's
Coke and Pepsi own everything.
They own everything. Anyway, MOXIE, not the soda, but the Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment, proved that there is enough atmosphere on Mars to produce oxygen. In fact, it worked really well. Now, it's just an experiment. It's not in the degree, the quantity that they would need it to be. But it could produce oxygen not only for people living on Mars, but for fuel, which is even more important. So MOXIE ran, and it was a success. So you can make oxygen from the carbon dioxide gas that is Mars' atmosphere.
Speaking of Elon Musk,
is so dedicated to this that he wants to, he believes the world is a simulation, but he still wants to get us off of it.
Yeah.
That to me is real dedication.
Yeah.
He wants us to go to 2.0.
I always figured that was just a really smart way to get the best engineers to leave NASA and come to work with
He's
him.
He's doing it right. He's doing it right. NASA's made a deal with them for the what's it called? The space Starship, right?
The Starship.
Starship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which NASA signed this contract and agrees to use it, and this is a spacecraft that has not successfully landed and not blown up yet.
It's okay. They'll work that out.
They'll probably get there, but it hasn't not blown up.
Also, as we now know, there's no oxygen in Mars, so it's probably not going to blow up when it lands on Mars. And the moon, you're safe there too. So
I gotta say, the video on the SpaceX applied launcher that sent the astronauts up to the space station this week was better than I'd seen for a long time.
Amazing?
Turns out
that was reused. That was a used car.
But also Musk put a GoPro on every possible angle.
Oh, I know.
They had such great video.
Oh, the video, the docking video, amazing.
And you know who's going to be hosting Saturday Night Live next week?
May 8th. Elon Musk. Saturday Night Live's response to the criticism was, you've never had to be funny to be on Saturday Night Live.
So one of the reasons I think there's so much interest, besides just kind of the general awe of it with SpaceX and manned flight, is that it looks so much like science fiction space flight.
Yes.
The inside of the capsule is smooth. It's not dotted with kind of military-looking dials and lights. It's white. It's clean. The spacesuits aren't bulky. You know, they look like something you'd pick up at J. Crew. It's just it's made it sexy, and you got to hope that it's as safe as the metal tin cans that NASA
I
has
suspect
been using.
it's safer, don't you think?
But it certainly modernizes it, and it makes it much more fun to watch.
Yeah, and look there's a GoPro right there. There's a shot of the docking. I mean, you never saw space look so good except in Hollywood. It's pretty incredible. A lot of credit to Elon. And of course, it's probably no accident that Starship looks and will land on Mars, or I guess on the moon, exactly like a 1950s rocket ship from sci-fi, because it just turns around and it lands. There's no lunar module or anything. And then, did you see there's like a window washer-like contraption that the astronauts get lowered to the moon's surface? It's a pretty funny, this is beautiful video. I mean, that's spectacular. Isn't that cool?
It's what I enjoy is watching this and then turning on my Apple TV and watching For All Mankind, which is the alt history version of the space race, and kind of looking at where we're going now and where Ronald D. Moore thinks we would have gone if space had continued to be competitive. It's fascinating to watch that show.
Well, it's only been a slight, I mean, in the general scheme of things, a slight pause of a few decades. I'm glad we're doing it again. I grew up watching, space launches and Walter Cronkite, and I'm just thrilled to see that we're doing it again. On a sadder note, I'm not sure what the story is exactly. From our shows, you certainly know the name Dan Kaminsky. He was a very well-known security researcher, uncovered flaws in a lot of Apple products specifically. He discovered the Sony rootkit infection, critical DNS security flaws, very popular at his Black Hat briefings, passed away at the very young age of 42 this week. Not known what the cause of death is, but he was very well liked in the security community.
He'll be missed.
And he made a big difference. He really did. He was very good at his job. He was kind of a genius.
He did it right.
Yep. So R.I.P. Dan. Sorry to his family and friends. That's, I'm sure, a terrible loss. And that concludes this edition of This Week in Tech. Renee, you're not going to get much time off. We'll see you again on Tuesday for Mac Break Weekly.
Yes. I'm looking forward to it. I miss you all.
Oh, we love doing that show with you. And I know you're very busy, making YouTube videos and everything. YouTube.com/Renee Ritchie. He's also a regular with Georgia Dow. You've got a great Apple Talks channel. And Georgia's got her own channel now, too, which is great. We're very
She's having more fun than me. She's reacting to Falcon and the Winter Soldier videos. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, you had to pick that Apple stuff to cover. I don't know.
I know. I should have picked the fun stuff. It's like Matthew Panzarino. His beat is Apple, Disney, whiskey, and tennis shoes. Dream job.
Tennis shoes.
Absolute dream job.
Yeah. That's actually, every time we have Christina Warren on, we talk about the sneaker market. Yes. And apparently there is a tech angle, because the bots that the bad guys now use to snap up every graphics card the minute it becomes available were based on the bots they wrote for the sneaker market.
Christina's a genius.
They refined their chops sniping sneaker sales, and now they've snapped up all the AMD processors and the NVIDIA graphics cards. Holy cow. What a world. What a world. Thank you, Renee. I'll see you on Tuesday. Thank you so much to Dwight Silverman. Congratulations on the new gig. on.forbes.com/Dwight. I think that's fantastic. Anything else you want to mention or plug?
Well, it's a paid newsletter, and believe it or not, I'm on sale.
Already on sale.
I'm on sale. It's great. I love it. And if you go to that URL, you get 35% off if you put in the code. So
it kind of is great. Like Substack in a way. Forbes just runs the back end for you.
Yes.
Oh, that's really
essentially
good.
They're my Substack, and you know, we split the revenue. I split the revenue with them, and so it's worth it because I have a lot of perks for it. So
nice.
I'm having a great time. It's a really interesting idea.
Very nice. It's interesting. Everybody on this panel was mainstream media, and then decided to become, you know, sovereign. There's something going on there, isn't there?
Well, I'm semi-sovereign.
I think it counts. I think it counts as sovereign. That counts. And,
sovereign adjacent.
Sovereign adjacent. Right. That's exactly it. Right. Philip-elmer DeWitt. Philip-elmer DeWitt, PED30.com, has made his way from time and fortune to his own thing, and it's going great. I'm glad to hear that too. PED.
We got a busy week ahead. The Apple earnings, Q2 earnings on Wednesday. And then May 3rd, the Apple Epic trial starts.
Oh, wow.
So,
and are we going to wait till June for the next Apple drop, the WWDC, June 7th? I think so, right?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Sometimes they will, things they don't have room for at WWDC, they'll drop the week before.
Right. Thank you, Philip.
I'm a happy subscriber to Philip, too. He puts out more emails a day than I put out videos. It's amazing just to watch them come in.
Well, if you're going to be sovereign adjacent, you got to work your ass off. Actually, if you're going to be sovereign, you have to work your ass off. Sovereign adjacent, I don't know. I don't know if I'm sovereign adjacent or not. I don't have to do anything. I just come here.
You're the original sovereign.
I might be. I might be.
OG.
The OG. Speaking of which, of course, we've always, since 2005, offered Twit as a free ad-supported network, and we're still going to keep doing that. We're very happy to do that. But don't forget, we now have a paid tier called Club Twit. It's going great. I couldn't be happier about it. You not only get ad-free audio or video versions of every show we do. There's feeds for every show we do. You also get access to this great Discord channel, which is so much fun. That's been actually a real education for me. We're able to do shows in there. I've talked to Scott Wilkinson about bringing back Home Theater Geeks in there. We've done a hands-on Linux show. We did it yesterday. And Jonathan Bennett and I are planning to keep doing that and make those available on our special Twit Plus feed, which is also a members-only feed that you will get as part of your benefit. The chief benefit is ad-free versions of our shows, but it also helps support Twit. Just $7 a month. Thank you very much for your support, and I'll see you in Club Twit. And thank you for watching This Week in Tech. I appreciate it. We'll be back next week with another great show. Meanwhile, another Twit is in the can.